Firstly, I do apologise if at any point during today's video you are at all distracted by the massive scratch down the side of our old Kia Niro crew car. You see, the other day it was minding its own business in Bristol Airport car park and someone decided to key it. And if you have any sensible suggestions as to who our Kia may be and why they would do such a thing, please do let us know in the comments so that I can pay them a visit and politely beat them to death with their own shoes. Speaking of shoes, this is the new Niro EV, and it's a car with big shoes to fill. You see, this old Niro is a fantastic car. It's the car that, along with the Kona, brought big range to the masses. It's not especially cool or exciting, but it doesn't matter. People love it. And actually, it's been the UK's second best-selling electric car for about 1.5 years now. But since then, Kia's gone a bit posh, as you can probably tell from a glance at this new Niro. So the question of the day is the Niro still the ultimate value, well-rounded, practical, sensible electric family car, or has it gone a bit too swanky for its own good? This is the Niro EV, and this is the Fully Charged Show.
Fully Charged Live is coming to California this September 10th and 11th, powered by Electrify America. Get your tickets to the #1 EV and home energy show now.
Now, before we dive into the new Niro, I think let's take a very quick drive in the old car, just to remind ourselves what made this thing so good. Because this is one of those cars that owners just cannot stop raving about. I always joke you can easily spot the Niro owners at Fully Charged Live because they're the ones holding you by the face, telling you how fantastic the Niro is. And it really is a very good electric family car. This, again, was the car that democratized big range. Before this and the Kona came along, if you wanted 250, 300 miles of range, you had to buy a Tesla. And then these came along and made big range a lot more affordable. And they did so while being impressively efficient, long before efficiency was cool like it is now, thanks to the Apteras and light years. It's just one of those cars that's extremely easy to live with. And at the end of the day, that's really all that most people ask of their cars, right? The only gripe, and I think most people's only gripe with it, is quite boring. Which brings us back nicely to this new Niro EV, and clearly Kia agreed with me that the old one was slightly lacking in the design department, because this new one has all the design, all of it. In fact, I would say that the design of this car inside and out is the most dramatic change from the old Niro, so it seems a logical place to start. Now, what's really clear with all the new Kia models that we've seen in the last few years is they are not afraid to make bold choices when it comes to design. The EV6 looks like a spaceship, and actually, being completely honest with you, while I've praised the way it looks a lot in the past, I'm not quite so sure anymore. You see them on the road, very spec dependent. It needs the big wheels, for example, to look right, because it's such a strange looking thing. This, I really like. I really like the way that this car looks. It's a really distinctive front end. I like these daytime running lights. I like the way they've placed this kind of faux grille above them, not quite where you think it's gonna be. It's striking, great color as well. Look, central mounted charge port. We love to see that. This speaks to a brand that actually understands what it's like living with an EV. Can we please agree, car brands, that this is where the charge port should just go on all electric cars? This means that wherever the charger is, however the parking space is arranged, you're going to be able to reach with your cable, which is not the case when you have it down the side somewhere, like where petrol filler caps used to be. But I digress. Great looking face. Around the side of the car, the sort of general silhouette of it is pretty similar to the old Niro. It's still a nice compact little thing. It's only 10 centimeters longer than the old Niro, same dimensions in all other regards. Still feels pretty compact on the road. You're gonna have no issues squeezing it down a city street. These Aero 19-inch wheels are standard across all the Niro EVs. You don't get any choice with the wheels just to keep things simple. Don't mind those, think they're pretty good looking. Worth noting that the Niro is still a multi-energy car, as it were, which is to say you can have it as a hybrid, a PHEV, or an EV. So it's not sitting on bespoke EV architecture. What's that going to mean for rear seat and boot space? We'll find out in a second. This is quite a fun little touch that Kia are very, very proud of. This is called the Aero C-pillar. Why Aero? Well, because it's actually got a little inlet just here, and the air comes out just behind the rear brake light here in order to increase the aerodynamic properties of the car. How effective is it? I don't know. Maybe it gets you a couple of extra miles of range. You can see daylight through it. It's not pretend, it is an actual aero feature, and it's kind of cool. It's something to talk about down the pub. You know, my Kia is basically a Lotus Evija. I quite like that. And also on the higher spec models, you can have it a different colour, which I think looks quite cool. Around the back, quite a nice bottom. I would argue that it's potentially this car's least interesting angle, but I do like these new kind of boomerang style rear lights. They've got quite a cool little design feature here when the car is switched on. And then we do have a nice big old boot here, 470 litres. I think that's 24 litres more than the old e-Niro for all you Kia boot space fanatics. And Kia described this as a 2-tier boot on the spec sheet. I'm not quite sure what that means. I think it just means it has a false floor. So there's loads more space down there, but this is how it comes normally, so that you have a nice flat lip. Makes it easier to lift things in and out of. All very nice and shiny and new on the outside then. I think they've done a really nice job in redesigning this car, giving it its own identity in the Kia range. Worth noting, however, that underneath, the stuff you can't see is not quite so shiny and new. This car has the exact same 201 brake horsepower single motor setup powering the front wheels. That's fine with me. Plenty of power for this type of car. But it also has the same 65 kilowatt hour battery pack as the old e-Niro, and range is improved by a mere 3 miles. Most surprisingly, maximum charging speed on this new Niro EV is 80 kilowatts. That is really below par for modern electric cars. And given how many other brilliant long-range 30-something thousand pound electric family cars there now are, this could hurt the new Niro. This is potentially a sign that they've lent too hard on the styling and design and have forgotten to improve the really important stuff. We'll come back to that in a little second when we drive it, but first let's have a nosy around this interior, because ooh, it's very nice. Isn't this a nice looking cabin? Completely different aesthetic to the old car. This now looks like a baby EV6, albeit one with less premium materials, but that's to be expected. It's a less expensive car. The old e-Niro interior was fine. It was very functional, but with this new one, there's a real conscious effort to make it interesting looking. There are nice shapes everywhere. I like the design of this central piece. I like the shape of this housing for the 2 screens. I like how it tapers off into a point here. I like this little piece in the door. You know, a lot of people think that this stuff doesn't matter and think that they don't care about it, but it does make a difference. Think about it. You'd rather sit in a room that was nicely furnished with art and lamps and plants than one with bare concrete walls. It's feng shui, baby. It feels better to sit in than the old one, despite the fact that the material quality is roughly the same as the old car, and that's what good design does. And most importantly, none of this snazzy new design has come at the cost of practicality. It's still a really nice cabin to live with. This new look Kia steering wheel with the 2 spokes, I love it. It looks fantastic. But all the buttons are physical and big and easy to hit, just like you want them to be. This panel here, which switches at the push of a button between serving radio and media to the climate control, that has the potential to be really annoying, but it's not, because it's well executed. It's responsive, nice, big, clear buttons, and aesthetically, it just tidies the whole thing up. so nicely. I really, really like the way they've done this. And by the way, if this central screen looks a little bit small to you, that's actually because what I have here is the entry-level version of this car. And forgive me if I sound weirdly excited about that. It's just that usually all press cars are specced to the gills. So it's really nice actually to sit in one that is probably a bit more representative of what most people are actually going to buy. So entry-level car, what does that mean? Well, I've got cloth seats, I've got a smaller 7-inch screen instead of the bigger 10-inch one you get in the posher spec versions. I don't have a wireless phone charger, I don't have keyless entry. Who cares? I'm fine without all of those things. And crucially, as standard, you do get most of the stuff that I deem really essential. So you do get rear parking sensors, you do get Android Auto and Apple CarPlay as standard. You do get adaptive cruise control, which is an expensive add-on in a lot of new cars, including the Porsche Taycan and my Polestar 2. All electric cars should have that. Back seats. So, front seats in my long boy driving position. And remember, this is not a bespoke EV, and yet, that is really impressive. This is a 4.4 meter long compact crossover SUV. It's not an especially big car. It's not a bespoke EV, and yet I would be really happy back here. And we've got flat floor as well. How have they done that? It must be something to do with the fact that, yes, this car is offered with petrol engine versions, but they're hybrids. They're hybrids. There's no pure ICE version. I think that is where you really feel the losses in terms of interior space. When you're in a car that is offered as a pure ICE that they've then turned into an EV, those are the ones where you do feel quite cramped inside, is my theory. I don't know. I just thought of that now. I'm not sure how true it is. But look at this. It's just one big floor mat for both seats in the back. Crazy. So then, out on the road in the Kia Niro EV. Funny story for you. On the weekend, I took this car to the beach. Just, you know, nice long drive, get familiar with it, formulate some opinions for this video. And when I got home from that 120-mile round trip, I realised that I'd sort of forgotten to formulate opinions about it. Because the car is just so quietly brilliant that you sort of feel like it's been a part of your life forever and ever. As a family car, it's difficult to fault. It just does everything you want it to do. It's quiet, it's comfortable, it's easy to see out of, it's very simple to drive. It's got lots of room in the front, lots of room in the back. A big boot, check. What else? Well, let's see. It's okay to drive. It definitely errs on the side of comfort, as you would hope and expect. But 200 horsepower, front wheel drive, whew, it's quite punchy, actually. I mean, that's sort of hot hatchback territory, that sort of performance. And I do have a sport mode, which I can access through this button on the wheel, which more than anything else changes the color of the dials, but it also makes the throttle mapping a little bit more responsive. So if you're on a nice twisty road like this, you can extract some fun from the new Niro. Lots of body roll, but that's okay. Realistically, not what this car is really about though. Let's pop it back into normal and talk about something more important, the efficiency, because, oh, it's efficient. I've just been flicking through my stats on the center screen here, and every drive that I've done in this car over the past week, over let's say 25 miles, I've achieved an efficiency of between 4 and 5 miles per kilowatt hour without even thinking about it. That is very impressive, and that's how this car manages to have the same real-world range as my Polestar 2, which has 10 kilowatt hours more battery material in it. Really, really efficient EV. I alluded earlier in the video to the idea that maybe Kia had slightly lost their way with this car. They'd gone too far in the direction of design and desirability, and they'd forgotten to improve the important stuff, the hardware. 80 kilowatt charging speed, okay, that's pretty poor. I think that should have been a little bit higher. I think 150 should be the minimum for a new EV, but truth be told, it's not the end of the world. We're talking about 5-10 minutes more spent at chargers every now and then. The battery size, the range, it's still more than enough for most people. 250 mile real world range, maybe 300 if you're very gentle with your right foot. Does anyone need more than that? Yes. Kia could have lumped in a bit more battery and made it a real world proper 300 miler, but given that battery material is the key factor in dictating electric car prices, it probably would have made the new Niro more expensive. And value for money is one of its key USPs, so that wouldn't have really made much sense to do. I think they've got it just right, actually. I think they've made a really, really good electric car, a little bit better and quite a lot nicer. Above all else, this car is just yet another sign that the Korean car makers Hyundai and Kia are in the ascension, and that their German counterparts, whom they've spent most of their lives staring at the bottoms of in the pecking order, should be very worried indeed. So then, concluding thoughts on the new Niro EV. Well, I'm sure you've gotten the gist from this video. Good. Gooder. What they've done is kept everything we liked about this old e-Niro and given it a nicer face, a much nicer interior, and made a few little tweaks that you could easily miss, but that just make it even better to live with day to day. No, they haven't changed too much mechanically, but they didn't really have to, because it was all there to begin with, because they started doing electric cars way before anyone else could be bothered. So there we go, the Niro EV. Still the benchmark for me in this segment of cars, even if the competition has gotten a lot stiffer. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and if you have been, thank you for watching.